time to ask a last speaker on our digital stage. He's one of the thought leaders who's been with us on this journey for quite a while as well. He's senior lecturer and director of the Center for Organizational Learning at MIT Sloan School of Management. Please welcome on stage with me, Peter Senge. Peter, it's great to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Wonderful. Peter, you're a leading voice when it comes to system thinking. Your book, The Fifth Discipline, has sold around 5 million copies. And when we look at everything that we've talked about the IDGs today, we are setting out for a huge systemic transformation. Maybe the kind of starting question to you is, what do we need to know on this journey? What would you like to give us away with?
Well, mindful of the themes of the IDGs and the kind of flow of the meeting, pick up just on one thing that was just said, which I think is really an important reminder for us all that, all this is really asking of us is to be humans. That may sound almost too mundane, but of course that's until we think about it. I've spent a lot of time over about 20 years in China. I've been a longtime student of Eastern Asian cultures and really a lot of the older cultures, including a lot of indigenous cultures. And there's a saying in the traditional Confucian culture that to become a leader, you must first become a human being. I've always loved that. To become a leader, you must first become a human being, because it reminds us that the journey of becoming a human being is our life. It also obviously states that leadership is a little different than just being in a position of authority, which is a confusion, of course, that's a huge problem in the world, in all cultures. I mean, almost all. I think the really old, like indigenous cultures, is much less of a confusion, but even there it gets confusing. We think because someone's in a position of authority, they are a leader. And then we often define leadership in that way, which is basically a very bad language practice. You don't need two words for the same thing. If you're a president or if you're a boss, you're in a position of authority, that's true. But to say you're a leader de facto is a huge problem. The other problem, of course, goes with that is that it tends to quickly imply to everybody else that they are not leaders. So I think that is a kind of very simple way into a very big and important aspect of this journey, which is the leadership needs to come from everywhere. The people who are leaders are the people who step ahead, who kind of really get committed and look for whatever they can do in whatever sphere of activity and influence they have. This is way, way too big and way, way too long-term to rely on hierarchical leadership. And I say that because, to me, climate change is a great window. The IDGs, the SDGs, the transformation in our society is not about climate change. Climate change is just a symptom, but it's sort of like the stroke or heart attack for the 55-year-old person that wakes the person up and they go, wait a second, I guess I have to change. But of course, the real thing they have to change is how they live. They can't do anything to affect directly the conditions that produce their stroke, but they can do a lot that affects the quality of their whole well-being, which over time will affect the conditions that produce their stroke. So it's the exact same sort of situation. Climate change is the reminder to us that, well, we can talk and talk and talk and talk, but in the end, it's what we do and how we live that really matters. So, and lastly, the other reason climate change is a kind of gift is that it helps us calibrate. As someone who's been involved in understanding the science of a lot of the sustainability issues for a long, long time, one of the fundamental challenges has always been, well, what's the time horizon? It seems to be very out of whack with the time horizon that governs most of our institutions, and it is. But now we can say with climate change with some more clarity, this is a problem of the 21st century. If we really, really, really get our act together, in the next 20 or 30 years, we'll begin to stop the rise of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the concentration, not the emissions, the concentration. It won't happen any sooner than that. And at that point, we might actually begin to turn a corner and start to imagine what it's like with those concentrations falling, which will eventually stop the rise in global mean temperature. This is a problem of the 21st century. I was recently watching Carl Sagan, the famous science interpreter that was an icon for many of us in the United States and around the world. Probably the last in the US really popular mainstream science show, because he was just so good at both explaining and evoking. You know, he could explain to you a lot, but you got such a sense of the wonder, the majesty of the universe, the awe, which really is the spirit of true science. And he basically said, he was testifying to Congress, I think it was 1985, so it's a long time ago. We know that the people have understood climate change for a long time. And he ends with 3 comments. He says, first, this is intergenerational. My point. This is a problem of the 21st century. It's not a problem of this decade. This decade is urgent, but climate change is not a problem of this decade. It's global. So no matter what our individual country does, it really won't matter if there are some, collaboration and critical mass of countries around the world acting. So you might say the other gift of climate change is, for once, maybe the first time in human history, we all actually have the same problem. And the very last thing he says to the Senate committee in which he's testifying in the US Congress is, in the end, he said, it'll require a change in consciousness. 1985. Eminent science writer. In the end, it'll require a change in consciousness. I think the IDGs are hopefully be another tool to help us recognize that in the end, everything that's manifest is a result of what's inside us. It starts with thought, it starts with feeling, it starts with emotion, it starts with relationship. And then we produce what's outside of us. We're not going to solve these problems by just trying to manipulate what's outside of us. And that's the role that tools like the IDGs can play.
Mm-hmm. If I understood you correctly, also what you just said, it's also about people as individuals taking responsibilities for our own lives, but quite often how we feel the IDGs are misunderstood as well is that we're trying to kind of tell people once more, this is your responsibility, it's one thing you have to do by yourself. But actually, what we want the IDGs to be is really an integral part of systems.
Exactly. There's another old saying in traditional Chinese culture, the problems of collective karma cannot be solved by heroic individuals. We do need heroes. We need people with the courage to step up, but it's every one of us. And it's not about us as individuals. It's really a core paradox in a way. I think this is a paradox of leadership in general, to be honest with you. It's deep personal. It's very much about the individual's openness, courage, willingness to stick your neck out and do things, whatever you can do. And it's not about you at all. Right? The problems of collective karma cannot be healed by heroic individuals. This is a collective problem. But the collective is nothing more or less than us in our related state of being not just me as an isolated individual, but me as a human in a web of relationships. So, yeah. We often use the term systemic efficacy. It's a terrible term, but it's the notion that we start to build individually and collectively a sense that we can really shift the systems that we have created. We have created them. There's nothing about, burning fossil fuels that's based on the laws of physics. It has to conform to the laws of physics, but it's not dictated by the laws of physics. It's nothing but human habit. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and then we got used to it, and then we built institutions around it, and then we all became part of it. We have to realize that system is a kind of a bad word because it makes it sound like it's something outside of us. But the systems work the way they work because of how we work, how we think, how we act, and how we relate.
When we last shared a stage at the partner gathering, you're also quite critical about some of the framings, the wordings that we use, the inner, the development, the goals. Each of them can be criticized for its own framing. And I also do wonder, what would you like to tell us? The IDG is obviously getting criticized already, and we will be getting criticized even more. How can we react to that in a way where really we can develop out of it instead of, getting stuck in trying to serving everyone's needs?
Yeah. I remember years ago, I was laughing when you were talking because I remember something a Frenchman commented to me once. He said, you know why the food is so good in France? Because everybody criticizes the food all the time. We have to start to see criticism as useful. I mean, really, it's humans thinking together. And of course we don't agree. And of course things can be improved. So if we view criticism as rejection, that's the problem. But it's our choice. Yeah, well, specifically, if I recall, I was just pointing out the problem with goal, inner development goal. It's very Western. It's very modern. If I use the kind of Vogue language, which I don't really like much as a rule, but in general, you'd say it's very, co-masculine, the dominant system. We set a goal and we work towards it. Whereas I think real development requires intentionality, not goals. And the subtle difference is important. So that was the point I was making. But the spirit of it was just that, to be a good criticism. Criticism is how we improve things. If we think we got it right, we're in big trouble. The only thing we can be 100% certain of is we definitely don't have it right. And whatever we have today is at best a useful next step. I have really enjoyed being involved in the whole IDG process because I think it's a step in the right direction. How the step leads to further steps, and further steps is really what comes next.
Well, thank you so much for helping us improve this as well. And talking about next steps, obviously one of the next steps for all of us is to take the survey, to spread the survey. I'm wondering if you might have taken it yourself already, and if so, what would be skills that you have added?
No, I haven't had a chance. So I've got to get going on that. I can do it later today.
I'll take you up on this one. Thank you so much, Peter, for once more making time for us and being on this journey with us. We hope to see you again with us here in Stockholm. Have a great day. Thank you. And with this, there is